Cover. Right now, I'm going to introduce our guest panel that we're going to have. We're going to talk about the power of hope, perspectives, progress and possibility. And joining us on stage for this panel, we did hear from him earlier, is Professor Clement. He's a cognitive neurologist with research interests in molecular genetics and clinical epidemiology. He's also had the privilege of caring for families with Huntington disease since 2003, and he's contributed to the majority of international clinical trials for people with HD since 2008. Feel free, you can come up on stage. Pick a chair, any chair. We'll be having a chat soon. He's a member of the Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee, a member of the Therapeutic Goods Administration, and contributed towards the governance of several health services and non-for-profit organisations. Would you please welcome Professor Clement Loy? Now, joining Clement on stage from SA Care is Chloe Kempe. Chloe is Chief Executive Officer of On-Call Group Australia, SA Care, bringing more than 25 years of experience in the disability sector. As a founding family member of SA Care, she has long-standing connection to the organisation and its mission, having progressed through key operational and leadership roles before stepping into the CEO position she holds today. Chloe leads with a clear focus on building capable teams, driving service excellence and delivering meaningful outcomes for clients, families and communities across Australia. Would you please welcome Chloe? Next up to the stage, I'd like to call on Monica Cazzolli, who is a community practitioner for Huntington's Australia. She's over a decade of experience in the HD space and a background in behavioural science. She's dedicated to supporting the HD community and all those affected as they navigate their journey. And she has a strong interest in working with children and young adults with a focus on early intervention. As a manager of community programs, she leads a team that supports and connects the community right across the country. Please welcome Monica. Next up, we have Carmen Warnes, who is a carer and a community member here in South Australia with Huntington's. Carmen is a devoted carer and advocate, supporting her husband Chris, who we met a little earlier, as he lives with Huntington's disease. Now, with compassion, resilience and strength, Carmen draws on her nursing background to navigate the daily challenges of caregiving while striving to maintain a sense of normalcy for them both. And as an active volunteer with Coffee & Co in the Adelaide office, Carmen is always seen supporting others, offering kindness, empathy and a steady presence to those around her. Welcome, Carmen, to the stage. And finally, I'd like to call on Cassie Caratti, who is gene positive. Cassie is a gene positive member of the Huntington's community and a researcher at Edith Cowan University. Her team's project, The Hidden World of Huntington's Disease, explores how creative, co-designed approaches can be used to share the lived realities of HD, and it was undertaken with support from Huntington's Australia too. Through her work, she aims to amplify HD voices, reduce stigma and deepen understanding of the impact of Huntington's. And Cassie is also currently undergoing IVF with pre-implantation genetic testing and is passionate about improving access to these options for people affected by genetic conditions. Please welcome Cassie, and what a wonderful panel we have today. Oh, look at me, how dynamic. We're moving from lectern to chair. A huge welcome to our panel, and we're so grateful to have you all here today. Obviously, we've had some wonderful discussions in rooms, but this is going to be a really great conversation. I'm going to start with you, Cassie, first, because we've heard from a lot of professionals and researchers in the room, but I'd really like, if you don't mind, to just share a bit about your journey and what life looks like for you at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm gene positive.
And when did you find that?
I found out Huntington's was in my family when I was 18 and did the testing a little while after that, found out my mum was positive, and then took me quite a while to go back and get the results myself. So I think I was sort of mid-20s when I actually got those results.
Wow.
But definitely from the day that I found out it was in my family, it's been on my mind ever since. There's not a day when you don't think about it, and it affects every decision that you make in your life.
How did your professional life intertwine there?
I ended up studying, I went into neuroscience and did a sidestep into psychology. So I think that was influenced by having that awareness, and obviously living with mental health issues in the family, which now we know was because of Huntington's disease. So in my family for a long time was misdiagnosed.
Right.
I think my grandma, who was the first person we found out had Huntington's, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia,
Right.
Whatever it was called back in the day, chronic depression, and her brother was diagnosed with MS and passed away when he was 27.
Okay.
And that's a common story that I hear in the community as well.
I can see some nods actually happening. Talk us to how you got to this point now where considering going through the IVF journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk us through the first steps and where you're at now.
Well, I always knew if I was gene positive, I didn't want to pass the gene on. And through my own research, found out that with the progress that's been made, discovering the gene, they came through with PGT, which is pre-implantation genetic testing, which means they do IVF, then they can test each embryo to see if it has Huntington's disease or not. Then you select that embryo and implant it, hopefully get pregnant from it. So far I have one Huntington's disease-free son.
Okay.
And currently working on having a sibling.
Okay.
So literally had a egg collection procedure yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Went straight to the airport and flew over here.
We're even more grateful to have you here.
Can do it all.
And that's really wonderful news to hear that as well, because I
Yeah.
suspect it would be a lot of toing and froing.
Yep, it is. But to me, that's what hope is personally, knowing that my children won't have the Huntington's gene.
Carmen, if you don't mind, I might just hand this over to you, because I did notice that when Cassie was talking about diagnosis, I saw you nodding your head a little bit and talking about symptoms. What, if you are happy to share, what has been your journey to get to diagnosis and to treatment?
Yes, I guess I was nodding because Chris's dad ended up, he was what they call a spontaneous mutation. So
Right.
Chris didn't know Huntington's was in the family at all. And his dad showed symptoms at the age of 80 with his walking, but we didn't know that it was Huntington's. And also Chris's older sister was misdiagnosed for a long time, told she had other things, and then went to the GP clinic, to a different GP in that clinic, and he said, has your mum ever been tested for Huntington's? And so that's how the ball started rolling. And then Chris was 50 when his symptoms started, just by twitching his fingers, which seemed sort of unusual that he couldn't stop that. And then once we found out his sister was positive, we knew then that,
That was
we
the
were on
direction.
that journey, yes.
You're really embedded in the community here, which just reading the description of you, you're a huge contributor and really valued in the community here. Are these discussions that you have with perhaps newer people who might come in as well in terms of diagnosis, or the journey's obviously not linear?
No, it's very interesting hearing everyone's journeys is completely different. And in fact, we have a few new participants coming to Coffee and Co. And I noticed that probably because they're younger, but they're very open to talking about their history and how Huntington's came about. Because we're all in the same boat, so I guess, we don't want to not talk about it, like the elephant in the room sort of thing. So,
Clement, if maybe we could send the microphone down to you. What do those stories of perhaps the puzzle pieces fitting in terms of diagnosis? Is there hope with clinicians in making this, I don't want to say straightforward, but a smoother process?
Yeah, I think, as you know and everyone knows, Huntington disease can affect your movement, your thinking, and your mental health and behaviour. And it's really the latter two that often don't get picked up. And I still see so many families that were broken up because someone had the beginning of Huntington disease, had some unusual behaviour, but it was put down to, oh, look, you're being mean. And that's very sad. And so some of the things that happened in the recent years that have really helped that, until 1996, there wasn't a proper genetic test So there were still lots of people misdiagnosed then. That has helped the accessibility of that test. There's increasing awareness through a lot of different ways. Does anyone watch Call the Midwife?
Yeah.
Apparently there's an episode for that.
While it's just coming towards you, Monica, I might just get your take from Huntington's in terms of supporting families when they're on this journey, even just through diagnosis. What supports are out there and what's changing in that?
I think more than anything else, it's seeing not just the person with the disease, but the impact on the entire family. And I think that's changed a lot in the time that I've worked with Huntington's, is there's a lot more acknowledgement that children, young people, carers, irrespective of your outcome of genetic testing, being at risk, there's nobody that HG doesn't affect in a family, and providing that wraparound support at every stage of the disease progression and as you progress through the different stages of life, I think is what really makes people feel supported.
This seems like the right time to speak to you now, Chloe. The model of care that you guys provide is very much focused on that, the wraparound support. Can you talk us through the way, I guess, where you are, how the model of care was designed so that it wasn't looking at, say, Huntington's?
So we have worked very closely with the Huntington's Association in South Australia previous to the merger. As we worked with them and the team at Flinders Uni, we really identified, there are similarities with everyone's progression with Huntington's, but it was so important to maintain the care around the individual and what those individual needs were, and really the consistency of staff, and how do we upskill our workforce to really be able to provide that specialised care to those individuals. So we grew that. We worked really closely with the association to ensure that we could support the families and support all of the individuals. So the community that we have created, particularly at our site in McGill, it's really lovely to see. And the support has just made such a difference to all of the families as well. And the integration with everyone is what is probably the most special part.
There is, I guess, in society sometimes an aversion to that kind of care, though, and a fear, no doubt, from people who are diagnosed. What do you do in your organisation to just bring back some of the dignity or some of the choice or what have you? And obviously it is working with families, but what are some of the things that you obviously consider?
I mean, most importantly is obviously the person that we're caring for. We must listen to every single choice that they would like to make, and we must respect that as well. So our teams recognise that in all of their care, that everything is around the choice of the individual, and then ensuring that families are actually part of that clinical decision making as well. So they know the individual best, and they have a really important decision to contribute as well. So ensuring that it is really a holistic team that's looking after everyone, and regardless of what clinicians are required to be in that room, that we all work collaboratively to ensure that care is what that individual needs.
Monica, I might throw this next question to you. What are some ways families who perhaps they're looking for that model of care, how can they advocate for their loved ones when you're in these circumstances?
I think self-advocating is amazing, and we see some incredible advocates within our community, but sometimes we place too much emphasis on family members having to advocate for themselves, and I think that's where post-merger we've had a really, really strong voice to be able to talk to the national needs of community, to raise the profile, as Lenny and Clement always say, as a known rare disease. So family certainly plays a part, and obviously their decision making and the individual is at the heart of everything, but as supportive organisations we really need to step up and be able to advocate on behalf of everybody.
Carmen, I'm going to now ask that same question to you. How have you been advocating? What lessons have you learned? And what are some of the hard barriers that you've faced over the years when advocating for Chris? Because I can imagine it would be very difficult some days.
I'll have to think about that for a minute. I certainly do say to anyone that listens, you definitely need an advocate. Anyone does, like anyone going into hospital.
Oh gosh, a trip to any emergency room, and you think, how are people going if they don't have someone by their side? For sure.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I just do it so often I can't think of any examples. But I guess advocating for, the best sort of care and treatment that Chris can get. Certainly asking questions and...
Who have you, in times where you've needed extra support, or, whether or not it's getting a second opinion, who have you turned to help you with that?
Oh, well, probably the Coffee and Co group, the HD community, like just so much knowledge and support and, shoulders to cry on. Usually you'll find someone that's either been through the same thing with their loved one that they're caring for, asking how I'm going. That is, without that, it's absolutely invaluable, because without that, it's hard enough everywhere you go explaining to someone what Huntington's is, because they've never heard of it. Yeah, so being able to go into that room and have all those people understand exactly, what you're going through.
For any carers listening right now who might be starting out on that journey, what's your advice to them?
Definitely don't. I think Huntington's Australia, this has just been amazing. I think it's, the best thing that's happened to Huntington's for a lot of years. So, don't try and do it on your own, and just reach out. There's so much information, so many people there willing to help you, so that you really are not alone. And don't be afraid, because we're all there, going through the same thing.
Cassie, obviously you're, in a different phase, but have you connected to some of those communities, and what has that provided you with?
A part of my journey at the moment as well is I was invited to take part and guide some research. So that was with Mel, who spoke before, and that's the Hidden World of Huntington's Disease Project. And you can see the photography exhibition out the front. Before that, I was quite isolated. So I grew up in my family. I found about, the first time I ever heard of Huntington's was when I was 18, was told that my grandma had it. And it was not talked about. And I think now people are a lot more open talking about mental health and therefore talking about Huntington's. But before then, my family was encouraged to keep it secret and don't let anybody know, because they'll judge you or it'll affect your work and insurance and things like that. So I was quite isolated, but when I joined the research project, I met a lot of people that way, a lot of people from the Huntington's community, and suddenly I was meeting people who had the same story as me, and was in a room with people who understood about Huntington's without you having to explain about it. And furthermore, I've been in contact and connected with people working in Huntington's research around the globe and people living with Huntington's around the globe. So I have this sense of a global community, and everyone's working towards the same goal, and that's a stronger future for Huntington's disease.
It's funny because obviously this panel we're talking about hope and the sense of hope within the community, but the one thing I'm deriving in a lot of these conversations is what connection can do for hope.
Yes.
What gives you hope right now, Cassie?
Well, I have hope for a cure and a treatment, definitely. And I think now that there's more awareness than there's ever been, and more research than there's ever been, and hearing the outcomes today just really inspires hope. Hope for me, like I said before, comes from knowing that while we're waiting for a cure and treatment children don't have to be born with Huntington's disease because of PGT and IVF. And I think that gives hope to families, knowing that the future generations won't have that burden, but also the Huntington's community, knowing that we can hopefully end this in more than one way.
Carmen, I'm going to ask you the same question. What is giving you hope? You've got such a great connection to your community. What's giving you hope at the moment?
Well, I think all the hearing about all the research today definitely gives me a lot of hope, because years ago, say 10 years ago, it seemed like every trial that was started would fall over. And in fact, I remember when Chris was first diagnosed, I used to read everything, you know, on the internet. And then after a couple of years, I just stopped. I thought, just tell me when there's a cure. But now, yes, there's, you know, real hope.
Clement, how does that make you feel, hearing that firsthand? Developments in your field are really uplifting at times.
Absolutely, and this morning I explained why I've got good reasons to have hope for good treatment for people, families with HD. But another thing that I heard just then, and that gives me great hope, is the openness about Huntington disease. I'll give you an example. You know, if someone with Huntington disease has slurred speech, people who don't know about Huntington disease would assume that they don't understand either. Having the openness to say to people, look, people with Huntington disease might have slurred speech, but their language function is still there. Take some time and talk about that. I think that openness brings great hope to how we can improve everyone's lives.
It's one barrier down, isn't it? Having the conversation.
The key barrier, yeah.
Speaking of conversations, though, how do you balance the complexities of hope, but also, I guess, realism in sometimes the conversations you might have to have with people too? That must be a difficult day sometimes.
No, I think it's about honesty. It's about trying to, I think Atticus in To Kill a Mockingbird said, you know, you don't really know how someone feels until you climb into their skin and walk around in it. And I think it's about honesty in that. And I think I feel very privileged being able to share so many people's lives, families with HD.
How can we improve access to knowledge about trials, access to trials for people who, you know, you could tell that, especially during your session, there were so many questions, especially online. How can we improve access to that information and people participating in those as well?
I think Huntington's Australia has done a great deal in bringing that into a more accessible way. So, you know, in the past I might be talking about trials with people in New South Wales, and now it's through Australia. I think, you know, having social media and other things also has changed a great deal.
Monica, this might be a curly one for you because I haven't given you any notice on this, but what can you speak on perhaps what Huntington's is looking at in the future to keep improving advocacy or access to certain things? What plans have we got ahead that we can maybe look forward to?
I think we're just getting started. And in the 2.5 years since the merger, we've done an awful lot. Look at everybody in this room now and everybody online. I think we've done significant ways of building our social media presence, which helps get out to further communities. We're looking at stuff in the rural and the remote space, and we're looking in the Indigenous community, which has been overlooked for such a long time. And I think we're just going to keep building and growing. We won't stop raising our voice to the NDIS, to the government, to everybody who will listen, and let them know what Huntington's is like and what we really need for people living with this.
I love it. Fire up. All right, I'm going to ask this question to everyone on the panel now, and this is our wrap question before we take questions. What is the one thing that either you personally are taking away from today's event or that you've heard and you hope everyone takes away? And Monica, if you want to kick us off.
Just how united we all are. I think it doesn't matter where you come from and what your background is. Everybody who has a connection to Huntington's disease, whether you work in this space, whether you volunteer in this space, whether you're a community member, we all get it and we're all fighting for the same thing, and that makes me really hopeful.
Chloe, what is giving you hope, and what message are you hoping people take away?
Yeah, what's giving me hope is the contribution that we can make to the quality of life for those living with Huntington's, and ensure that we can support them through dignity with progression. And take away exactly the same thing. You know, Huntington's is not a well-known enough disease. It's something that everyone in this room, we obviously know about it intimately and understand it, but until someone's life is touched by it, they're not going to understand it. So how do we get that message out so it's as prevalent as MND in the community as well, so everyone can understand it and treat everyone as a person rather than a diagnosis?
Clement?
I was reflecting the last time we've got a meeting that, you know, professional carers, families, people with HDI come together was 10 years ago. So I'm really heartened by this. And I think bringing all the groups together, only good things can come out of this. And thank you, HA, for doing this. Would you do it next year again?
I'll pass it. Just a bit of microphone
I was just
handovers.
going to say, Amelia, speaking of the word hope, or a few of you saw Chris and Daryl sitting out here this morning with Jess, and Daryl's wife asked Daryl, what does the word hope mean to you? And he said, I'm alive. And then I asked Chris, my husband, what does the word hope mean to you? And he said, I've got a chance.
It's truly special. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Cassie, what's the one thing you wish people will take away from this event?
For me, something I feel so strongly about is that you're all part of the Huntington's disease community. It's people, the carers, people living with symptoms, gene positive, our researchers, our healthcare professionals. We need you all, and we all need each other as well. And like you mentioned before, it's a global community, so when we're sleeping, there's people on the other side of the world doing the work too. Yeah. And I think working with Mel and everyone from Huntington's Australia, everyone in this room, I think if the people on the other side of the world are half as passionate and half as dedicated, then we have a good shot.
Absolutely. Are there any questions for our panel? I might just get... No, but I'll listen to it very closely and I'll relay it. Okay, so that's two questions to Clement. One is about how common is the spontaneous gene mutation, and the other one about CRISPR technology as well. So that's a complex one for you.
I think CRISPR would take a long time, and I'll come and let's have a chat after that. Spontaneous, there's a Spanish series that suggests about 4%. So I guess, you know, we think about a familial disease, it kind of had to start somewhere, but there are also other complications. But about 4% is what's been quoted. Love to chat further about CRISPR.
Any other questions in the room? And we'll just check, Kathy, if there are any online questions too for you. There is a bit of a delay with our live stream too, so we might get them through. That's a great question, which I'll just summarise for the live stream. But that is, should there be some kind of post-test, whether it's counselling or a triage? Monica, I might maybe throw that to you if that's okay. What do you make of that?
Very much so, I agree. I think we should have interventions in this space around mental health and how people are managing at every stage available to people at risk. During testing, obviously there are strict protocols around that, and after testing, the reality is the clinical services don't often have the resources to be able to do that in an ongoing way, but that's where Huntington's Australia can offer that. We see everybody through the journey of the disease, and so that's something we really are trying to promote. Is that linking in, staying connected, and sometimes those connections come and go. You know, people may link in with us well before they're considering genetic testing. They might go off, live their lives for a while, come back, seek a referral for genetic testing, go through that process, and link back with us after. So that continuity of care, I think, is something that we do really well, and that I think is a really good model of care.
Cassie, it'd be remiss of me not to ask that question to you, though. What would you have liked that when you first did your genetic testing? What would that have meant to you if there was some process like what was just described?
I think I've known that there's always support there. So through the neurosciences unit in WA, I had my testing. We had to do the process of genetic counselling first, and they had social workers there who, I think, when I was a bit younger, they would always reach out to me, and my life just got in the way. I was busy being a teenager or a young adult. Mm-hmm. So I probably didn't use that service as well as I could have. But when I was ready, they did provide free services. I had some sessions with a neuropsychiatrist in training, which was really helpful, and I got a lot out of that. And then after that, I've reached out for services through Huntington's Australia, met up with social workers there. So I think there's always been people there to have a chat. Just at different times it's taken me some courage to reach out.
When the time has been right. Absolutely. Any other questions in the room? Anyone on the live stream? Yes. Oh, you're going to have to do a good job of shouting that one. That's a Monica question.
Absolutely. We are limited by our funding in particular states and territories, but we are a national organisation and we're committed to supporting everybody affected by Huntington's. We can't always do that in person, unfortunately, yet, but we can do that remotely. So absolutely.
Anyone else in the room before we wrap up with our wonderful panel? Anyone online? No. We've covered everything off quite nicely then. Well done, panel. Very comprehensive. Not too many questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank our panel again. Of course, Professor Clement Loy, Chloe Kemp from SA Care, Monica Cazzolli from Huntington's Australia, Carmen Warnes, who is a carer and bravely shared her story. We're so grateful for that. And to you, Cassie, for sharing your story and the journey that you're on too. We really appreciate your time here today.